You said something earlier, Omar, that caught my ear, and I want to circle back to it because obviously we're going to talk about the Tyreek Hill thing. How can we not talk about it? But you said that two guys were going to be arrested. I mean, when you say arrested, do you mean they were ready to take them downtown? They're not going to be available to play in the game, arrested in that way?
Oh, absolutely. That was the intent. And the officer that got suspended, if you watch all of the body cam footage, and I did that yesterday, you could see him talking to other coworkers and complaining about the fact that they were not arrested. That's why it should have been 0939. This is the intent was to arrest them. And even in the initial arrest, he says, you're not, actually, in another incident, Calais Campbell is talking to him, and he's like, "Hey, we need that teammate. He's not playing today. He's going to jail." This is before Calais was put in handcuffs and was going to be arrested. It's interesting that the officer that got reassigned, he is involved in every aggressive incident involving all three players, and you clearly see why only one of six officers got reassigned.
What did the Dolphins do to keep the arrest and the absence of Calais Campbell and Tyreek Hill from the game from happening?
Drew Brooks. Drew Brooks is the Dolphins head of security. He came to the situation. That's who you hear. It's not Drew Rosenhaus that Tyreek is saying, "Hey Drew, hey Drew." It's Drew Brooks, who was already at the stadium. He came into the situation. He diffused it more than likely by calling a police captain. And what people don't understand is the Dolphins are the number one off-duty employer of police officers in all of South Florida. So clearly they've got a little bit of pull because there's a lot of money that goes into that direction. And everybody in that stadium is there to see Tyreek Hill. Can you imagine the uproar if Tyreek wasn't available because he got arrested because he got a traffic citation?
You had an excellent column yesterday, and we agree 100% when it's time to break down this situation. We live in a world now where our habit is go into your corner and point fingers, and you're never wrong. They're always wrong. I'm right. And there's no middle ground. There's no gray area. There's no way to apportion blame to everyone. I'm going to give you the floor here to share your views on this, but it isn't as clear as both sides would want it to be.
Uh, it's very clear to me as an African American male. I'll tell you a story. I was going to, and I wrote this in my column, not in depth, but I was going to my college orientation with my father. My mother had made my father take me because she wanted us to have bonding time, and it truly was bonding time. And while we're driving up, my father, who was not speeding, gets stopped by the police, and the police actually make my father get out the vehicle. And the whole exchange, I can't remember it because this is so many years ago, but the whole exchange made me extremely uncomfortable about how this state trooper talked to my father, how this state trooper, my father was my father. And I watched my father humble himself and act in a manner and decorum that ensured that he was going to get back in that vehicle and be able to take me to my college orientation. And on that drive there, he gave me the talk. And as an African American, we all know what the talk is, that when you're involved in any incident with the police, you need to be on your utmost, no matter who's right, who's wrong, what happened in the situation. You need to show them the utmost respect because they have your lives in their hands and they have the authority to kill you. My biggest issue, while I think the officer was uberly aggressive and was in the wrong in so many instances, which explains why he was absolutely the one that was punished and the only one that was punished, because he was involved in every single incident that required being overly aggressive with every single player. The same one officer. While I think that he was absolutely in the wrong, if my 22-year-old son did what Tyreek did and talked to the officer the way Tyreek did and conducted himself the way Tyreek did, I don't know if not only would my son have been arrested, I don't know if he would have been alive, because you cannot do that and you cannot conduct yourself in that manner. And when I watched the body cam footage and you hear all the little subtle comments that Tyreek was making and all the little things that he said and why he wouldn't roll down the window. This is not how an African American male can conduct himself in a traffic stop if he wants to make it home or make it to work alive. And I understand that officers play a role in this, but you cannot follow Tyreek's lead. This is not a do what Tyreek does situation. And that's my disappointment. And not only that, but also for Tyreek to demand that the officer be fired and gone. We're talking about a player who has probably on his fourth chance in the NFL. It's not like Tyreek has a squeaky clean resume in terms of incidents, occurrences, and he has been given grace time after time after time after time again. And I'm not saying that we should not be looking into this officer's background, his handling of others in the community. I'm not saying that he should not be reprimanded, but to ask for a man who'd been employed by the police department for 27 years to be immediately dismissed because of this one incident, I think that crosses a line.
And we're completely on the same page on all of this. I didn't do a good job setting up the question. I'm talking about the lack of clarity as to where fault can be apportioned because Tyreek Hill not cooperative initially. But then, Omar, my take on this has been it stopped being about securing his cooperation and it became about punishing him for daring to not cooperate. Even when it was clear that he was ready to comply. Okay, I understand that you're serious. They still drag him out of the car, throw him down, cuff him and mistreat him, not to secure his cooperation, but to send a message, you don't mess with us, and if you do, this is what you get. That's where the cops were clearly in the wrong.
Absolutely. No question about it. But that's happened so many times to so many people in America. And cops believe that they're the all power and full autonomy to do and treat people however they feel if you don't follow their instructions. And the main thing, my ex-wife was a police officer, and the main thing that I always knew from her was that your job as a police officer is to de-escalate any situation or scene. And that officer Torres, did nothing to de-escalate. In fact, all he did was pour gasoline on every single scene. And that's why you could clearly see this is going to be a great learning opportunity for not just all officers, but hopefully for Officer Torres, because that's not good policing. And I'm pretty sure that the police department has come out and acknowledged that, hey, this is not a good policing, and hopefully this is a moment that we all learn from.
We played some of Tyreek Hill's press conference from yesterday, and I was struggling to thread the needle between, and there was a shift in his demeanor. He goes from, we need to find a way to work together, we need to find the positives in this, to, oh, that guy's got to be fired. And maybe there is a way to work positively and use it as a way to help people understand from both sides how these interactions should go and still fire the officer. I just think it's a tough sell to go from conciliation to, no, he's got to go. And maybe he does have to go, but that's for the police structure to figure out with hearings, due process, police union, et cetera. Maybe that's the end result. I just think it's hard for Tyreek to sell this idea, let's move forward hand in hand, only after you fire that guy.
Mm-hmm. He's mentioned that they wanted to apologize. The officers want to apologize. He's denied that. And there's all kinds of talk about what that forum was and whatnot. I think a great opportunity here and I agree with Tyreek that we should move forward and learn from this. But a great opportunity is for officers to learn their behavior in conduct with individuals who probably are less than cooperative. It can escalate to that. And also this new law that Florida passed where you have to be 25 yards away from any scene of an incident arrest, which I don't know how in the world that passes, because what about the bystanders who are there just filming it? So now you're preventing us from filming it. Like, how does that make any sense when we're just trying to police officers? I think that it's also important that body camera footage is on every officer. And if they're involved in any sort of situation or scene, that they make sure their body cameras are on. And if their body cameras are turned off, then that leads to an immediate suspension. But also from Tyreek's, hey, this is a great opportunity to do some videos on how to conduct yourself when you're stopped by an officer. How to, because Tyreek talked about how my parents didn't raise me that way. And initially, before the body camera footage, I found Tyreek quite disrespectful on so many fronts to those officers. And that is not the talk. So maybe Tyreek needs to go over the talk that all African Americans have to have with their children about how to conduct themselves when they are in the presence of police.
When we look at the incident and we look at the impact it had and the fact that Calais Campbell and Jonnu Smith came to his aid, we've heard some comments from people like Tyreek Hill about how it brings the team together. And, we always see coaches and athletes looking for anything they can contrive to try, it's us against the world or whatever. Is this like an organic, authentic way that you don't want it, you didn't plan for it, but it happened, and it brings the team together and maybe makes them better than they would have been? Do you see that possibly happening here?
Absolutely. That's one of the main points of emphasis that they've had all off season. It's creating a closer bond so that when we're in those moments, we can hold each other accountable. We can talk to each other. That's why people like Calais Campbell were added, because they needed an infusion of leadership, especially after losing Christian Wilkins. And that's the one thing they've talked before to kick off training camp. Tua had a party at the house for the entire team. And it's about creating those bonding moments so that you can be there to support one another. You can be there to help each other achieve your goals. They've rallied behind every single one of these players who got their extensions, and Steve Ross did hand out a lot of extensions. And it's really a moment to galvanize their teammates and support one another. And nothing was bigger and better than having three teammates, because Odell Beckham was there as well, on the scene to support their brother who's face down, knee and back, being arrested, possibly got kicked, to support their teammate while he's in a traumatizing moment.
Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.